Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we have another upgrade video. This time a Sonus Faber speaker that was sitting. The Sonus Faber Sonetto 3. So one of their nicer models. I think this is moving up their scale a little bit in performance. Let's dig into this thing and take a look at this speaker and see what was sent in, how it measured, what was inside, and what was I able to do with this thing? And did we make it better? Was it a good candidate for making something better? I hear of a lot of people that say, well, I wouldn't upgrade that speaker. I'd just buy a better speaker. And this is a perfect example of when you move up the ladder in a company's products, how sometimes you get a different speaker, a bigger speaker, but not necessarily a better speaker. Sometimes, a lot of the time, your money's way ahead by going in and upgrading all the parts and bringing the performance level up than to have to buy a more expensive speaker and then have to do the same thing to that speaker. And this is the case with one of these. We've been into some of the Sonus Faber models in the past. This one's moving up the ladder a little bit. It's like $5,000 a pair. What did you get for $5,000 a pair? Did you get higher quality, or did you get a prettier speaker? And they do make pretty speakers. But let's take a look at this thing. First of all, the cabinet looks great. And I've got it setting up on a stand here so we can kind of get it up in the air where you can see it a little bit. But the way it was made looks real nice. I kind of hate it that they didn't radius the back side of the driver through holes. Like, what are they thinking there? That always helps with airflow. It's well braced. It's not a real resonant box. It's got a great looking curve to it. So it is pretty. These little rings and covers go around the drivers. They kind of snap in place and kind of finish out the look. As you can see here, this one's mounted without it. And then once you drop that beauty little ring in there on it, it finishes out the look. Drivers wise, the little woofers I'm not too impressed with. Little metal cone woofer, not a lot of X-Max, bucking magnet for shielding. I'm not really sure why we're doing that. But pretty small little woofers that are in this thing, so don't expect it to hit real hard, move a lot of air. These two little 5-inch woofers are not going to do a lot as far as impact. And then the mid, this little 5-inch mid that they've got here, I actually like the way this is made. It's a paper cone, and it's got a solid phase plug, but it doesn't have a phase plug sticking out, but it is solid. It does not move with the cone. It's pretty nicely made. These are all cast frames, which are very open, and it doesn't block a lot of the airflow and stuff like that. So that stuff was nice. The tweeter and the way it was made looked really good, and the measurement of the raw drivers was fair. So binding posts. The binding posts look nice, and they're probably brass, and they're coated, and they have a nice look. But then they put steel washers on the backside between the nuts and the binding posts. I'm thinking, oh man, you were almost there. You were so close. You had some nice binding posts on here, fairly nice, but now you've surrounded it by a ferrous material. It's like, man. And then we get to the crossovers. Now, the woofer circuit is the cheapest stuff you can get. It's a sandcast resistors with steel ends. It's at least a laminated iron core inductors, all electrolytic capacitors. Like, oh. But it is low frequency only. These were crossing at about 250 hertz and down, so I can't knock them too hard for the cheesy parts in these things because these little woofers aren't playing up too high in frequency yet. So yes, do these parts smear the signal? Yeah, absolutely. Are you going to notice it a lot just in bass? On this speaker, I don't know. I mean, definitely you'd notice it if you went to big air core inductors, but dollars for dollars, I can see them and understand them doing that. I don't understand all the electrolytic capacitors. You could have used a polycap, something that discharges faster. That would have really helped improve the clarity. Now, the upper crossover for the mid and the tweeter, we've got a few little polycaps on there, but we also have a lot of electrolytic caps, some iron core inductors, and a lot of sandcast resistors that have a little bit of ferrous material on the ends. So pretty cheap parts. So for $5,000, What'd you get? Well, a pretty box. The drivers look nice, but you got the same cheap guts in this thing that they put in all their other cheaper models. I don't know with this company at what point do you spend enough money with them that you get the higher quality parts. I don't know. Obviously, it's not at $5,000, so it's like, oh, guys, you're killing me. All right, let's look at the frequency response measurements on these things, see what they're doing and what's happening there. Let's first look at just the on-axis frequency response. And on this one that we're looking at, I shot the woofers and the mid-tweeters independently. You can see how each one rolled into the other because they had the dual binding posts on there, and I was able to do that. There's a little bit of a hump at the bottom, and there's a big hump at the top, starting at about 8,000 or 9,000 hertz. Let me put my glasses on here. Oh, starting before that, starting at about 6,000 or 7,000 hertz. You've got a rise from there all the way to the top. Now, if it was just in the top octave, and if it was maybe just a little bit of a rise, like that's not that big a deal, because as you start moving off axis, that will start falling away. And if you set them up 10 degrees off axis or more, that little hump is not that bad. In this case, though, it's pretty up there. It's almost 5 dB up, and it's starting a little lower than I would like. So there's something there to have to address. Spectral decay. Very impressed with the spectral decay. I rarely ever see anything this clean. So no stored energy with the drivers. These things are stopping and starting really fast. No ringing, no overhang, no overshoot, nothing. Just really clean, so they get a good thumbs up in that category. Horizontal off-axis looks great. Falls off very evenly all the way across. The vertical off-axis is not that bad. We're starting to get a little bit of a dipped area there as you move up vertically. The impedance is pretty flat across the lower region. It does drop to 3.5 ohms. It is a 4 ohm speaker. It states so on the back of it here. Definitely have an amp that's designed for those 4 ohm loads before you start playing with this thing. What was I able to do with this? Man. So I go in and I look at, first thing I look at is raw driver's response. So let's look at that. Let's look at the individual driver responses. You can see the woofers by themselves. You can see the mid and how high up it goes. And you can see the tweeters curve. And the tweeter's got a little knee at the bottom, but that's something I can control. And it does have a humped up area at around 8,000 to 9,000 hertz. There's a little bit of a peak there. And I could have put a notch filter there and tried to remove it even further, but I felt like with the crossover I put on it, I had it pulled down low enough that it dropped off pretty evenly in the off axis. So that wasn't really a problem. The drivers, pretty well behaved. I don't see a bunch of breakup or anything in the upper ranges of that little mid driver, so fairly easy to work with. I didn't have to stack a ton of parts on this thing to get it to behave. So that was good. They designed some pretty nice drivers in this thing. So there's a lot to work with in this speaker. So I would say it's one of those that has good bones. It's got something you can build on. So let's look at the on-axis frequency response after I was through with it. Notice it's a lot smoother and more balanced. Took some of that top end peak out of it. And if you look at the individual crossover responses, you can see where I push the crossover points. Let that tweeter, which is a pretty robust tweeter, let it play on down there fairly low so that it's picking up a lot of that detail and resolution. Instead of this heavier cone woofer having to play it, let's let a lightweight, fast little tweeter play it that's going to settle faster and be cleaner, and it's going to have better resolution. So you're going to hear detail levels a little cleaner. So yeah, overall the crossover response of the drivers and how they fell into each other and summed, all that looked great. Horizontal off-axis still looks really good. Drops off pretty smoothly. And the vertical off-axis, because the crossover point's lower, it's not as drastic of a dip there as we start moving up. We're not moving these away in time from each other as much as it was before, so it's a little more even all the way across. The spectral decay, again, looks really smooth. I'm super impressed with the spectral decay on these little drivers, so that looks fantastic. And the new impedance is more balanced and a little smoother. And with the parts that I put on there, using a bunch of air core inductors, we only dropped to 4.3 ohms down at the bottom, so I was able to bring that up just a little bit. And the tuning frequency, I didn't even write that down on here. It's tuned fairly low. It's tuned to 46 hertz. Now that's going to mean a 3 dB down, maybe at 50 if it's lucky, but it's definitely not going to move a lot of air or have a lot of impact when you've got very X-Max limited, very small drivers. But again, overall, this was something I could really work with. So I've put together an upgrade kit that includes really high quality parts. It is going to allow for you to choose whether or not you want to put JB poly caps with bypass caps in the tweeter circuit, or you do want to put Sonic caps in the tweeter circuit. You know, it costs a little more. There's quite a few little caps there in the tweeter circuit, but resolution and detail is going to come up a lot. And then compared to this stuff that was in the signal path, wow, resolution levels are going to be off the chart better. So if you've got a pair of these and you spent $5,000 on these things, not realizing that you really didn't get $5,000 worth of speaker, but you want to hear this thing play in the way that you wished that it played. You want to do an upgrade that will take it up to high levels where you can really get some performance out of these and probably beat up on most of the speakers that this company offers at much higher price points, because we're going in and we're putting higher quality parts. We're balancing out the response. The overall performance is going to go up by a lot. And I'll throw in a set of tube connectors. I always want to get rid of this crap and put some tube connectors in there. Another good thing too about the tube connectors, you can replace one set of binding posts and wire everything to the tube connectors, and you can run a little jumper over to the old binding post, and you can use either or. I love it when you can use either or, because the first thing I get from you guys is an email or a phone call saying, I can't believe how much difference those tube connectors make. That's an impressive improvement in clarity. And the flat earthers just hate it when I talk about connectors, because they think it doesn't measure any different, it can't sound any different. But the truth is, the signal transfer isn't disrupted as much as it goes through there. You don't lose clarity and detail and things when you've got pure copper connections, and just in this case a copper sleeve over your wires. It really improves the signal transfer, and it sounds a lot better. So doing all that, I'll have it there on the site. You can go there and click on it, decide whether or not you want the Sonic cap upgrade or not. I'll throw this no-res in as an option. The way this cabinet's made, it's not a buzz box like a lot of cabinets, and you will have to try and pull all this foam out of there to try and get the no-res to stick, so it might be a little bit of a challenge digging this stuff off and getting the no-res in there, but it will tighten things up a little bit. It will. So I'm going to throw that in as, if you want to add the no-res, you can just go to the no-res page and order you some no-res for it. So that's it for this one. I got more upgrade videos to shoot and a lot of new stuff to share with you guys. Really cool new stuff. So stay tuned for some more videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next video.